Hi, thank you so much for watching Centrifugal Yoga and Fitness. I'm Laura Wilson, and I teach you ways to modify exercises, yoga poses, to find a way to make that pose fit your body. Today we're going to use yoga blocks on the floor. This isn't a regular yoga workout. This is a plain straight up tutorial on how to use a block or two blocks to enhance and accommodate several common yoga poses. Stick around to the end. I'm going to share with you how to use a block for a not so common yoga pose, but one that you've probably heard of before. So be sure to stick around for that. Make sure you have your nice safe spot, your yoga mat, and of course a block or two. This is all about using the blocks. While you're getting ready, just a reminder, please ask your friends to check out my channel and to give this video a like. And let me know in the comments below which of these seated or floor poses or supine lying down poses that you felt the block really helped you out with the most. We're going to go ahead and begin on hands and knees with child's pose. So as we find our child's pose, I'm going to go ahead and use both blocks. We can actually take the block and place it underneath our bottoms to accommodate this pose. But we can also use it in any of its levels to accommodate our forehead. So play around with this, and remember you can find blocks just about anywhere. You can take these with you to class, and this will help you make the pose more accommodating. So you can use just the one under your bottom, just the one under your head. And speaking of the one under your bottom, we can find our lightning bolt pose. Again, rather than sitting, or hero's pose is what I'm thinking of. Hero's pose, rather than sitting down between your legs, between your feet, you can take one or two blocks, and 2 blocks is usually better for this. 2 blocks lined up like that to sit down on, and that eases the tension on your knees, opens up along your thighs, and takes the pressure off of your feet, because sitting down between them does put a strain on your knees. And this isn't a pose that we do that often, but it is kind of a nice one to do, just because it does get our sit bones grounded and allows us to open our chest. So this is a variation for hero pose, where we would sit down between our feet, or for our lightning bolt pose, where we would perhaps sit on our feet. And again, this will hit your knees, this will hit your feet. So you can always place a block right there between your feet instead of yourself between your feet. Let's come back to a seated position. And when we begin classes, a lot of times we start an easy seat. Some people like to take the block and sit on it. So you get your sit bones right there on the block, and then you can find your easy seat. One thing that this does is it does lift your pelvis up, takes some pressure off your hips, but it also allows you to tilt your hips up to where you can actually stack your spine and sit taller, rather than like this. You're not as inclined to do that when you're sitting on the block. So it's a nice accommodation for when you're in an easy seat. The next seated pose is our boat pose. Everybody's favorite, I know. And this is where a block really does come in handy to help you out. Because when we're doing our boat pose, what we really want to do is focus on squeezing our knees together. A lot of people, once we sit up in this, our knees separate. We want to squeeze them together, which can be a real strain. But taking a block here helps us to keep that squeezing action going on. The other thing that squeezing a block or squeezing our thighs together does is it activates those inner thigh muscles, which actually ties in and draws up into our core muscles, which is what our boat pose is all about. So we squeeze the block, hinge our hips forward, lift our chest. And again, we can squeeze the block and just hinge back here. We can lift one foot up or both. Keep squeezing your block. I feel personally this is a little more intense. So while this is accommodating to help us get our alignment and stuff better, it also helps us to activate our core a bit more in the pose. And let's just take a quick counter pose here. because when you squeeze your thighs together like that, it's always nice to open them up again. So those are some seated poses that we can use our block in to help accommodate and make them more pleasing for our body. We're going to roll on down to the floor now and look at some ways we can use 1 or 2 blocks. And I'm going to go ahead and use 2 at a time just to make things more efficient with the time that we have on this video right here. But you can use one or the other in this first pose that we're about to get to. So let's roll on down to the floor. So for bridge pose, very similar. We can take our block, place it between our thighs, and give it a squeeze as we lift into our bridge. Keep squeezing that, because what happens is as soon as we lift, our legs want to separate, our knees want to separate, and this helps us, gives us some kind of focus to keep our knees pressing in toward each other without actually coming back together. Now this is my personal favorite right here, taking the block, and you can do it at a bottom level, side level, and when you get bigger or more stretched out, you can take it to the high level. I'm going to keep it middle right now and take it underneath the pelvic bone. Make sure it's not underneath your lower back, but underneath that pelvic bone, and you can feel it kind of like where your sit bones are here. This is the back side of those. So a block between the knees and or underneath your pelvic bone. And this is such a wonderful place to let go. You can feel the opening of this pose with this block without all the work of squeezing and lifting. This is a restorative variation of our bridge pose. Okay, I could stay here a while, but I won't. The next variation is keeping the block between our knees. We can take this and squeeze it and come over to our twist. Now squeezing the block here is awesome, but we can also use another block underneath this knee if it doesn't come all the way down to the floor. So most of the time you can buy blocks. If you buy a yoga starter kit, it comes with 2 blocks and a strap. We'll look at the strap another day. But this is a way you can use 2 blocks or just 1 if this just doesn't work for you. So that's our twist. So the next one is also one of my favorite ways to use a yoga block, and that is placing it under our pelvic bone on the flat way, totally flat, so that we can enhance our experience of just an easy inversion. So just taking your legs up into the air is an inversion. Obviously our feet are higher than our heart, but here we've elevated so that our hips are higher than our heart. And I don't know about you, but it only takes a few seconds for me to feel more of a lightness in my feet than when I'm on just the floor. And of course you can do all the different inversions here that you want. Whew, it actually intensifies that one a little bit. And before we get too comfortable, because again, I kind of like this one, let's bring it down. So for the next one, you will need 2 blocks. I'm going to show you a way to do fish pose. These last few are going to be restorative variations. I'm going to show you how to do fish pose, and you'll have to set up to get started on this. We're going to use 1 block at this level, turned this way. And the other block, we're going to use high level, just a little behind it. And you're going to have to adjust a little bit to get into this if you even want to do your fish this way. The fish is a wonderful opener. It's good for clearing your sinuses. If you have allergies, trust me on that one. I do fish pose and it's like, oh, clears them out, and I can a little better than that. So let's see if I breathe any better after we do this. It's not quite the same as full fish pose, but that's okay. So this one we want to make sure is right here across our shoulder blades. So find your shoulder blades, and we're going to lie down across our shoulder blades. And again, I'm going to have to adjust a little bit right there. And then the other one we wanted, oh, I did pretty good here, to place underneath our head. This way we get the opening across our chest without straining our neck or having to work to stay in the pose. Now we can just relax over these blocks, get this chest opening. It's not clearing my sinuses quite as much as a real fish pose, but it is relaxing. And some people, if I lead this in a class, I always do this pose right before we go into final relaxation, and some people will stay right here in this for that whole bit of time. Well, let's go ahead and come back out of this, and we'll come into our traditional Savasana, which would be our final resting pose. Ooh, that sounded bad, especially since the translation is corpse pose. Final rest. So, let's roll it back. Shavasana would be here, which can be a strain on our lower back. So one thing we can do with our blocks is take them up underneath our knees, any level that we want. I'm going to stick at this level. And that should ease some of the tension on our lower back. Of course, you can flip this up to the side level and find Shavasana right here, taking that pressure off the lower back. And again, I don't want to stay here too long because this is actually feeling very comfortable. But let's take our time coming up. Scoot that out of the way, roll it over. So those are some poses that you may encounter in any yoga class that you take, especially the last one. Those last few that we did, you're probably going to do in just about every yoga class you ever take. So ways that you can use a block to accommodate and make the pose more accommodating to you. Most teachers like to make your body fit the pose, but my goal is to help you learn how to make the pose fit your body. And speaking of that, time for that bonus pose that you may not do that often in class or ever, but I'm going to show you a way that you can use the block to work on it anyway. We're going to look at dolphin, which is similar to downward dog, but instead of being on our hands, we're going to be on our forearms. And one thing the block does, if we take our hands like this around our block, it kind of helps us line up. For most of us, this will be about shoulder distance. So we want to take our block like this. Let me scoot back. And find that shoulder distance. And then you can practice in this, lifting up from your knees here, ears between arms, or take this to the full pose, lifting up. But what the block does is it allows us to get set in a more stable place, because sometimes people are like this or like that, or too far forward. The block helps you get what should be closer to that shoulder distance for you. So that is all of our on the floor block poses that I can think of. If you can think of another one, let me know in the comments below, and let me know if one of these in particular spoke to you, like the putting it under your pelvis in bridge pose for me. And again, please do give this video a like and let your friends know about my channel so that they can come check it out as well. All right? Thank you so much for watching.